In 2022, we celebrate 130 years of HBCU football. On December 27th, 1892, Livingstone and Biddle College, now known as Johnson C. Smith University, played in Salisbury, North Carolina, with Biddle winning 5-0. Over time, HBCU football has evolved. HBCU football's popularity continues to rise. Millions attend games each year and millions more watch on television. The HBCU bands provide some of the top entertainment in the country. Over that time, some of the best players to ever play in the National Football League played at HBCUs. Every Monday through Friday on the HBCU Football Daily Podcast, national radio and television host Donal Ware takes a look at what's happening in HBCU football and talks with coaches, players, administrators, and media about the 2022 season. Make sure you join the conversation on social media by using the hashtag HBCU130. Now, here's your host, Donal Ware.
This is the HBCU Football Daily Podcast for today, Friday, November 4th. I'm Donal Ware. It's Friday. We've already had a game, as a matter of fact, on yesterday to kick off week 10 of the HBCU football season's got a game tonight. But of course, as we do each and every Friday, we preview the HBCU national game of the week. I mean, there's a couple of games that we could look at in terms of the game of the week. I mean, you can look at the North Carolina Central and Delaware State game. I mean, that's a big game. I mean, it's a pretty big game in the MEAC. I mean, a loss by Delaware State, and Delaware State is pretty much, I mean, it's done at this point with only a couple of weeks left to play. We definitely could have looked at the Albany State and Fort Valley State game, while the SIAC's Eastern Division has already been decided by Benedict. I believe that at the end of the day, and that's at that Fountain City Classic, which is, I mean, it's a big time football game, right? And it still means a whole lot. While the SIAC's Eastern Division has been settled, at the end of the day, there's still the Division II playoffs. And with that being said, I think that the loser of this game most likely is out of the playoffs. I mean, I would probably venture to say, yeah, I think either one of them losing probably is out of the Division II playoffs, especially with where the regional rankings were that came out this past Monday. But the HBCU game of the week, I mean, there's a number of games we could have looked at. I mean, I can't really say Shawan and Elizabeth City State. I mean, it means obviously a Shawan victory means CIAA Northern Division title for the Hawks. I mean, we could have looked at Virginia Union, Virginia State. That's a big game. It's a big rivalry. Again, a loss by Virginia Union, I think, is detrimental because I don't know. I think Virginia Union still has a shot at the playoffs, even with a loss. But a win certainly. I mean, I think with a win, regardless of what Shawan does, I think a win by Virginia Union would put Virginia Union in the Division II playoffs. But it's got to be the Southern at Florida A&M football game. It's got to be, for these reasons. One, you look at Florida A&M, and Florida A&M has quietly, and you know, I sort of say quietly when I say this, but Florida A&M is sort of quietly 2 losses, right, to start the season, Carolina, and then the big loss to Jackson State. Florida A&M has not lost a football game since. Florida A&M is on a roll. And when I look at Southern, Southern is coming off the, that's a tough win, a tough loss, last week to Jackson State. But Southern is still in that race for the Western Division crown. And while Prairie View A&M right now only has 1 loss, the Panthers lose the head-to-head battle because Southern defeated Prairie View A&M. So, a loss here by Southern really, I think, really hurts Southern. Now you're talking about 3 losses in the conference. Prairie View A&M, excuse me, only with the one loss. So that is in fact why this is a big time football game. I look at this and I look at Southern, and I'm going to start with their offense because they have a dynamic player in Bashan, in the quarterback, Bashan McCray. I mean, he's really, really good. He can get it done with his arms. He can get it done with his legs as well. Not so much maybe last week. I mean, you look at the game against Jackson State, maybe not so much in the loss to Jackson State last week. But when you look at his numbers over the course of the seasons, yeah, he wants to get that interception rate down. It's a 12-7 touchdown to interception rate, but he's completing 62% of his passes. On top of that, he's the leading rusher for this Southern football team. And so what I want to do right now is I want to give you the numbers so I can make sure that I have the numbers correct. Again, he's rushed for 418 yards, 5.5 yards per carry. Also has 5 rushing touchdowns. And then you look at his completion percentage rate, 62% completion percentage rate, 12 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. The other thing about this offense, this is a high-powered offense. And you look at this offense, Eric Dooley, one of the gurus when you're talking about offenses. And I mean, look at the receivers, right? Cassius Allen averaging 16 yards per reception. You know, August Petrie, he's averaging 17 yards per reception. You also look at Chandler Whitfield, 12 yards per reception. You look at Cornelius Dyson, 19 yards per reception. And these guys are in double digits in terms of the receptions on the season. So this is a Southern offense that's big play, gets the ball down the field, high octane offense. When I look at the Florida A&M defense, I mean, I think at the beginning of the season, you would have said it's got to be about Isaiah Land. He was the FCS National Player of the Year, of course, the HBCU National Player of the Year last year as well on the defensive side of the football. His numbers are down a bit, but I think a lot of that is because other guys are making plays. He's getting all of the attention. He's getting double teamed. It's opened it up for other guys to make plays, even though his numbers may be a little bit down. I mean, when I looked at his numbers, and I want to look at them again to make sure that, of course, I give you the correct information, and I'll pull this up momentarily. Because he had something like, I think it was 13 tackles or something like that. But of those 13 tackles, and here we are, I'm going to pull it up right here, like 8 of them are tackles for loss. So, I mean, even though the numbers may be a little bit down, probably because he's facing a lot of double teams. I mean, I'd have to really, really dive deep into it to see what's going on here. As a matter of fact, I'm going to pull these numbers up for you as I'm looking at this. Yeah, so I want to make sure, because when I looked at it, I was like, wow, his numbers are down. He's played in 7 games. Remember, he didn't play in the first couple of games because of the situation with not being certified and ready to go for the season. 13 tackles, like I said, 13. 8 of those tackles are for loss. 5 of those and he's got 5 sacks on the season. But you look at a guy like an Isaiah Major who's made a major impact. He's got 60 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 2 sacks on the season. The thing about it, one of the things that Southern likes to do, Southern likes to can run the football, not only with McCray, but Gerard Sims as well. Florida A&M hasn't done a great job this year in terms of being able to stop the run. So that may be a little bit of an issue. They're not bad, right? But it's not great. And in terms of stopping the run. On the other side of the football, let's look at Jeremy Musa, the quarterback. He's got some solid numbers on the season. I think he's still, he's not learning the offense, but I mean, he's still got a ways to go. I mean, when you look at Willie Simmons and we talk about offensive gurus, Willie Simmons is another offensive guru. And I think Jeremy Musa has done some good things this year. He's got 14 touchdowns to 7 interceptions on the season. One of the things that the Rattlers have not done well this year, they haven't run the football. well. They're only averaging a little, maybe almost, or really less than 102 yards rushing per game. So they haven't run the football particularly well this year. But I mean, when you talk about wide receivers, I mean, there's a plethora of wide receivers led by Xavier Smith, who's really starting to kind of come around. He's got 63 receptions on the season, 703 yards. He's also got 8 touchdowns on the season. David Manigo's got 15 receptions. He's a deep threat, 226 yards. Their second leading receiver is John Murray Shareed. He's got 35 receptions for 490 yards. But the thing about Musa, he's spreading. While Smith is his main target, he spreads the football around to other guys as well. But this isn't as high-powered an offense from Florida A&M as we've seen in years past. Meanwhile, on the other side of the football, when I look at Southern's defense, I mean, they get after the quarterback. 30 sacks on the season. That's a lot. That's a high number of sacks so far. I mean, that's almost 4 sacks per game when you look at that Southern defense. They like to get after the quarterback, and that's going to be one of their calling cards it's been one of their calling cards on the season, and it's going to have to be one of the keys in this football game is, can Southern get to Jeremy Musa? Will that Florida A&M offensive line be able to hold up and be able to protect Jeremy Musa? So as far as predictions, I mean, this is the game is it's an old rivalry that goes back many years. You talk about the game being at Florida A&M. It's a pivotal game because, again, for Florida A&M, 6 straight wins. But now, I mean, really, the way Jackson State is playing, I mean, Florida and Florida A&M is, I mean, Jackson State is just going to win the East again. But Florida A&M has an opportunity at an FCS at-large berth to the playoffs. Meanwhile, Southern is still fighting for the Western Division crown. A loss for either team would be detrimental for either team. This is a tough game to pick because I want to know. I mean, I'd like to see how Southern responds coming off that loss to Jackson State. I didn't see a 35-0 game. That may speak a little bit, maybe, to Southern's defense because Southern's offense generated goose egg 0 points. Florida A&M is not Jackson State. And then, of course, you go back. That was a long time ago, but Florida A&M got just manhandled by Jackson State in that football game. But again, 6 straight wins. Both teams, in terms of quality of opponents, hasn't been spectacular. But I will give Southern credit because they've got 2 major wins against Prairie View A&M, also a big win against Prairie View A&M, and the other team, Alcorn State, the victory over Alcorn State, even though they had a Virginia University of Lynchburg in there and another team that was in there as the team is escaping me. And matter of fact, let me, I want to make sure I have the information right in terms of that team. So let me look it up. Southern, but again, because it was early in the season for Southern. Yeah, it was Florida Memorial early in the season. I think, all of that said, I think it's going to be a close football game. I think it's one that I'm going to predict that Southern is going to pull out this football game on the road. It's going to be a jam-packed game. We know Southern travels well, and there's going to be some Southern fans at Bragg Memorial Stadium, and thus I'm going to give Southern the edge over Florida A&M in this football game. Your thoughts, you can hit me up via Twitter at Boxtorow, BOXTOROW, or on Facebook. On Twitter, right? And on Facebook as well at BOXTOROW. Want you to enjoy the football game that you have this weekend. I'll be, in Greensboro, of course, calling the North Carolina A&T and Norfolk State game, an old MEAC rivalry, a non-conference game for both teams. So that should be a good game to call. Don't forget to tell a couple of friends about the HBCU Football Daily Podcast, where you can find us on our website at boxtorow.com. Maybe this weekend, after you've listened to this one, the next couple of days, why don't you go back and catch up on some of the podcasts that really go back to 2017. You can also find us on iHeartMedia.com and wherever you get your podcasts. Also, you can find us on the Box to Row YouTube page. Enjoy your weekend, enjoy your football game, and I'll talk with you on Monday.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the HBCU Football Daily Podcast. You can also listen to the podcast at boxtorow.com, iHeartMedia, or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to get your HBCU football fix on Box to Row with Donal Ware each weekend on the radio station near you, and on SiriusXM on HBCU, Channel 142, and on ESPNU Radio on SiriusXM, Channel 84. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Box to Row for the latest in HBCU football, and don't forget to tell a friend.